Now, a Jimmy Mathis exclusive, The Stone Zone, featuring Roger Stone, veteran of 30 years in politics and 9 presidential campaigns, including Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and Donald Trump. Here is Jimmy Mathis on WBAL News Radio 1090 and the WBAL app.
Welcome back to the Jimmy Mathis Show, with you till 2 o'clock. Time for the Stone Zone with Roger Stone, former Donald Trump top advisor, also author of his newest book, The Making of the President, 2016. Good afternoon, Roger. How you doing, sir?
Excellent, Jimmy. Excellent.
Good to talk to you. Late night on Capitol Hill last night. The Senate getting their version of the tax bill. Senate, Mike Pence, Vice President, making the trip down to the Hill for the photo op. Again, this is still a long way from becoming legislation. They have to marry it with the House bill. Look, there's a lot of questions on the way that this was passed, and a lot of those on the right saying that this doesn't go far enough. But is this a legislative win for Donald Trump, or could this, at the end of the day, bite him and become a liability?
Well, I think that boils down to the question of whether the final legislation they pass does enough to stimulate growth. This is hardly a perfect tax bill. Anything that goes through the U.S. Senate becomes a Christmas tree. They begin to add all kinds of things that are sometimes deleterious to the intent, if you will. But at the end of the day, the president needs a tax bill that will lower the barriers to entrepreneurship and job creation. If he can get a bill that will do that, despite other minor flaws, it will be a win. Defeat is no bill at all, and at this point, I don't see that happening.
I'm not sure this bill does that, though. These are really two separate things. You're talking about bringing down regulations and the burdens that make it very difficult for businesses just to prosper. Look, Roger, there are things in this bill that I like. You're bringing, the corporate tax rate down to 20%. You're getting rid of the estate tax. The individual tax cuts don't last more than 10 years because of procedural reasons.
This is a graphic example of why the people you hire to work on the White House Economic Council should not be Bush Country Club Republicans.
Right.
Donald Trump needed a simple, straightforward, and basic tax cut bill. How about the corporate tax rate shall be dropped to 20%? Period. End of bill.
I agree with you.
Now you've got something that would work. But when Gary Cohn, formerly of Goldman Sachs, liberal Democrat, in the Trump White House, heading this economic policy, surrounded by literally Bush administration alum, this is what you get. I think we need pure, undiluted Trumpism, and instead we're getting some kind of hybrid. Now, look, we have a record stock market.
Sure.
Unemployment at all-time lows. Housing market showing incredible statistics. Consumer confidence up. There's a lot of good things happening. Regulations are being hacked back at the bureaucratic level that doesn't get reported. But, unfortunately in the Trump White House, there are many there who are not for the Trump agenda, at least not the agenda that we think we voted for in the last election.
Roger, I was on the Hill last night till 2:30 in the morning watching this whole thing, and some of it's theatrics, but look, there were revisions to this bill that were literally, marked up by hand. There was there are similarities to the way that this tax bill got passed in the Senate to what the Republicans were complaining about with the Affordable Care Act. And if you're going to be, I'm not saying you personally, but in general, if you're going to be a supporter of the legislative process at the end of the day, I have major reservations on the way that this thing was passed last night. Again, it's just out of the Senate. Who knows what the reconciliation looks like when it goes to conference and everything at the end of the day. But it looked very, reminded me a lot of the way the ACA got passed back in the day.
I can't disagree, but let's move on to the real news of the day, which is, of course, General Flynn.
Sure. Yeah. Is there a story
the mainstream media reports of about a week ago that Flynn's lawyers had broken with Trump's lawyers and this signaled that he was going to take a plea. I have learned is the exact opposite is true. The Trump lawyers, the president's lawyers, cut Flynn off. To coin a phrase, they left him twisting slowly in the wind. Mike Flynn is out of cash, completely and totally broke. He spent his entire lifetime serving his country. He didn't amass great wealth while he was doing that.
Right.
Today, he's unemployable because of this situation. His house is up for sale.
His house is up for sale, correct. Right.
He literally doesn't know where his next meal is coming from, and Mueller and company have pressured him into a plea. Now, I think it's really important to examine what the plea is about. He is being charged with lying about being directed to set up a meeting with the Russians. Let's be as clear as we possibly can. Donald Trump, as president-elect, and Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, as a member of the White House staff, have every legal right to set up a meeting with the Russians. In fact, it's part of their job. The Russians have thermonuclear weapons that could incinerate us. Jimmy, not talking to them is not smart. Barack Obama had back channels to the Iranians, for God's sakes, but nobody wanted to charge him. There is no crime in talking to the Russians. There is no crime in being directed to talk to the Russians. So they come back at Flynn, they raid his office, Manafort style, with FBI, early in the morning. He has no lawyer present, and they claim that is the point at which he made a false statement to the FBI. So he's charged with making a false statement to the FBI. Really? Mueller? That's what you've got? Really? That's embarrassing.
But let's come back to that, Roger, because at the end of the day right now, that is what he was charged with, which is making a false statement to the FBI. I don't know what legal advice he had. I don't know the inner workings of that. But the whole purpose of this special counsel is to connect the dots when it comes to collusion with the Russians to hack the election, correct? I mean, that's the whole purpose of this entire thing.
And he still has nothing.
There's still nothing on that. Now, again, you can't lie to the FBI, and the fact that he was able to plea a deal, that's fine. But now you look at the media yesterday, connecting the dots to, I guess, Kushner. So what? I mean, not only is it, to your point, yeah, go ahead.
The point is that the Democrats, with the assistance of the media, have so stigmatized the Russians, WikiLeaks, Assange. In my own case, this past week, it was finally revealed that the confirming source that I had that told me that Assange really had material on Hillary, which he would publish, which he did, was a veteran activist in New York, comedian, and WBAI talk show host Randy Credico. And Randy Credico is a friend and communicates with Assange. Oh, my God, he communicates with Assange. Let's be clear. Communication with WikiLeaks and Assange is 100% legal. They are journalists. But they're so stigmatized that the public begins to believe that even communicating with these people is some kind of crime. It's not a crime. In fact, it's journalism. That's what it's called. That's why you have this hysteria. It's red baiting. It's fear-mongering. It's even worse. So it looks to me like Flynn and Kushner and the president were doing their jobs, and they're now being charged for it.
And, Roger, quickly before I let you go, you've been having this ongoing Twitter war, I guess, where they keep cutting off your handles, just where that is right now.
Well, we're still formulating a lawsuit. Look, I have a better grip on these new net neutrality rules, and this is really very simple. The old net neutrality rules provided net neutrality for service providers, but Google, Facebook, Amazon, the big boys, they were unregulated. They could cut off anybody they want. There was no neutrality. You had no rights on their sites. You could be defamed there. You could be censored there, and so on. The only ones who were forced to carry you were the actual carriers, the people who host your website or your email. So these rules, I think, are a step in the right direction. We are continuing to formulate the mother of all lawsuits. It will take place in more than one venue, and it's coming. People who themselves have been censored by Twitter, who may want to join such a suit, can contact me at stone@stonezone.com. That's stone@stonezone.com. We're going to put together a class of Americans who have been censored by the Twitter bullies. In the meantime, you have to go to the Jimmy Mathis tweets to see what I'm thinking.
And I will, I'll continue to be a conduit for you until they next meet. Roger Stone, always a pleasure. You can hear Roger Stone for the Stone Zone every Saturday, normally during the 11 o'clock hour. Roger Stone, former Donald Trump top advisor, also author of The Making of the President, which Roger was nice enough to come to Baltimore to sign some copies of over at Brent Circuses. We need to get you back in town real soon, Roger. Always a pleasure.
I'm ready for crab cakes. I'll see you soon.
You got it, buddy. Thank you very much. Roger Stone. Quick break. We'll be right back. It is 12:16. You're listening to The Jimmy Mathis Show on WBL.